Feel free to check out my TeePublic after the video, and support me on Patreon. Watch till the end of the video for more. Special thanks to SCRYE Productions for the epic remaster of the King Kong vs. Godzilla theme. If you want to check out more of his music, then subscribe to SCRYE Productions on YouTube or Patreon. Wow, the day has finally come. After 59 years, the two biggest monster icons of cinema will throw down in their long-awaited rematch. After so many teases, delays, and speculation, fans and general audiences alike can experience these two titans in a whole new way. In 1962, King Kong stood on top against the terrible Godzilla in a comedy that celebrated Toho's 30th anniversary and acted as a commentary on the advent of Japanese television. It would also become the highest attended Godzilla film yet and push the franchise into what we would all know and love today. And in the early 90s, Godzilla and King Kong almost had another matchup until Toho couldn't get the rights to the King Kong character, in a plot that involved Kong falling in love with a scientist who would transform him into a cyborg. This concept would be rewritten into Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah in 1991. But let us jump forward in time. 2014 saw the release of legendary Warner Bros. Godzilla, marking the beginning of the MonsterVerse. Despite the film's mixed reception, with mostly positive reviews, it was successful enough to warrant a sequel. But as explained in the last Kong retrospective, behind-the-scenes negotiations between Universal and Warner Bros. Resulted in 2017's Kong Skull Island, which would be regarded as the best in this mini-franchise. At that point, the MonsterVerse was already in full swing, and was met with moderate success. But when time came for 2019's Godzilla King of the Monsters, people were pretty torn. King of the Monsters would become the most polarizing entry in the MonsterVerse, and one of the most divisive entries in the Godzilla franchise as a whole, to where people either really love it or really hate it. Me, I thought it was pretty alright at first, but the flaws began to settle in for me and I slowly started to care less and less about it, unfortunately. While I did have some enjoyment with Godzilla 2014 and greater enjoyment for Skull Island, King of the Monsters would end up being my least favorite in the MonsterVerse, but regardless, Legendary and Warner Bros. Showed no concern since Godzilla vs. Kong had already started production. They proceeded to press forward. I mean, considering how many mainstream critics are just full of complete shit, I would have done the same. The film would be directed by Adam Wingard, who is most famously known for his Blair Witch remake and one of the greatest films to ever make Martin Scorsese weep tears of joy. Despite the reception of Godzilla King of the Monsters, there was still some excitement surrounding Godzilla vs. Kong. However, incidents such as the Hong Kong riots and the coronavirus would cause the scheduling for the film to be incredibly problematic, with numerous pushes and pulls to the point where many wondered if the movie would even come out. I mean, is it all just a cover-up for Death Note 2 or what? But lo and behold, here we are. It's finally out, and after lots of speculation and promise of being one of the biggest monster mashes in cinema, with the biggest box office opening during a global pandemic thus far, how is the film? Was the hype worth it? How did Adam Wingard's spiritual remake of perhaps the most important film in the Godzilla series turn out?
I'm so sorry. I really wanted to love this movie, but it was awful. Like, it was insultingly bad. For the sake of those who haven't seen the film yet, I will do my best to keep this review absolutely spoiler-free. But anyway, literally the first thing I noticed when watching this film was how unfinished the CGI looked, and for a movie made on a budget of at least 160 million and probably up to 200 million at most, it looks a lot cheaper than Godzilla 2014. Like, in fact, this movie looks like it came out in the early 2000s. There's a scene where Kong is eating fish and it just looks ugly. Like, for some reason the physics feel way off, and even some of the shots during the action scenes look like they're not even fully rendered. And speaking of action, I will give credit where credit is due. There are some enjoyable bits here and there. I especially dig how we're finally seeing Godzilla in this sort of bad guy sort of way here, which is something the marketing of Godzilla 2014 promised, but didn't quite deliver. Though at this point, it feels just unearned. And somehow the main characters are surprised by this change in Godzilla, as if humanity didn't unleash a world-ending space dragon in the last film. Which goes into my next point. The plot is so predictable. Like, there's very little payoff when there's actual plot progression. Like, you can literally map out how the entire movie goes as it continues, and not in the good way. Like Us, for example. I thought Us was a very predictable film, but I still enjoyed it. I mean, I really wanted to see where the movie would go as it progressed. Even if I correctly predicted how it would go, I was still invested as to how it was going to turn out. Here, it's nothing like that. And I will admit there are some parts of the soundtrack that I like. I do like some of the very few synthwave sort of tracks that were utilized, and I actually kinda dig Godzilla's new theme. I just wish it wasn't so obvious that it was basically a Walmart brand Akira Fukube, and I just wish it was its own thing, like what they did in 2014, the Millennium films, and Godzilla 1984. And as for the characters, they're all just absolutely worthless, and it's such a huge shame because you have great actors like Kyle Chandler, Millie Bobby Brown, Alexander Skarsgård, Jun Oguri, and especially Kaylee Hoddle, but they're given next to nothing to work with aside from a script that's so cliche that it actually kinda hurts.
But TitanGoji, human characters and that don't matter in a Godzilla movie. When did it ever matter in Godzilla movies? Everyone knows that giant monster films are simple little drink your brain out popcorn flicks. You just watch what's going on the screen.
I made a post on my Twitter about this particular mindset and why it's such a huge problem. This genre of cinema is so rich and has proven to be fully capable of providing such incredible and compelling human drama and sometimes very insightful commentary on society, politics, and so forth. Great examples that come to mind are the Heisei Gamera trilogy and the Attack on Titan duology. And sometimes it's perfectly okay for a kaiju film to not be so ambitious. I mean, just look at the original Rodan and Mothra. The problem is that when you dismiss an entire genre of media because it just so happens to have a couple of tropes that may be interpreted as campy, cheesy, and corny, not realize that there is actually greatness within this genre. But in the case of Godzilla vs. Kong, none of this matters, because none of it is good. I'm gonna go ahead and bring up a metaphor that Gojira5400 brought up in his video about Godzilla King of the Monsters. You go to giant monster movies for the monsters, very much like how you go to a restaurant for the food. Well, that food, or the monsters in this case, is being served to you on a plate, that plate being the plot. The characters, the writing, the direction, literally everything else. And what good is the food when it's being served to you with something that's just falling apart? Like, you might as well just eat that juicy steak and lobster on the floor. Other than that, the humor sucks, the cinematography is just weird at times, the writing makes no sense at times, and sometimes things happen because of plot convenience. Also, big warning, and I am dead serious about this. Sometime after the 55-minute mark, there's a short little scene that's actually pretty seizure-inducing. So if you're sensitive to that sort of stuff, I highly suggest skipping ahead 5 minutes. Like, it's bad. Like, it's actually a bit heavy on the senses. And it's such a huge shame because I really wanted to like this movie. I was for this movie since day one. I was honestly expecting a so bad it's good film, but it was far from that for me. It was just a bad movie. But before I close off this review, I just want to make something clear. I'm just a guy on the internet. My opinion doesn't matter, nor should it matter. I'm simply providing my own insight on a movie that I unfortunately didn't like very much. But if you like it, then I am honestly happy for you. Like, I am never ever gonna want to take that away from you. Like, I truly mean it. And if you're interested in a more in-depth discussion about Godzilla vs. Kong, then I highly recommend tuning into the next episode of the Toku Titan Cast this Saturday, April 3rd at 9 p.m. Eastern, where some good friends of mine are going to talk about the film. We're also going to go into some pretty hefty spoilers, so if you're interested in that, the link will be in the description, so stay tuned for that. But anyway, thank you so much for joining me on this journey through the history of Godzilla and King Kong. I truly enjoy doing this for you guys, and thank you so much for 17,000 subscribers and for your support. I truly mean it from the bottom of my heart. I am forever grateful for that. If you like what you see, then definitely consider supporting me on Patreon, where for a single dollar, your name can appear at the end of every future upload. Other than that, you can also get early access to videos, exclusive content, commission video requests, and receive a t-shirt of your choice from my TeePublic. And once I reach enough patrons, I'll review Keita Amamiya's famous Garo series. So if that's something you'd like to see, then go support me on Patreon. Feel free to like, share, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And this is TitanGoji.